if you knew you were enough? What would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, Suzette Virnon. Hello everybody, it's your life coach and relationship solutionist, Suzette Virnon, and welcome to my Enough Factor podcast. Each week, I endeavor to amplify 3 critical factors of your enoughness: your voice, your value, and your vision. Because I have found that when those are working in tandem, we have a more fulfilling and satisfying experience of our lives, of ourselves, and of our relationships. So it is my privilege, my passion, and my purpose to come each week to stimulate your voice, your value, and your vision, to give you something to munch on, to bring clarity to whatever you're dealing with in your relationship with yourself or in your relationship with others. For those of you that tune in every week, thank you so much. You're the reason that I hop up here and speak my truth and share with you. And if you're new, what I want you to know is my mission with this podcast is to help you to redefine what makes you enough in life and in love on your own terms, so that you can break the cycle of failed relationships and attract great love into your life. Tonight's topic was inspired by my participation in a recent relationship summit. I was one of the panelists. It was on this past Wednesday, as a matter of fact. And I just want to shout out to Nika Maria for putting together such a wonderful 3-day summit that it was just as transforming for us speakers as it was for those listening. And when I was looking and glancing at the chat while my fellow panelists was speaking and looking at people's responses at what was being said, I was able to kind of scroll through a little bit in between just to kind of see how people were responding and how they were being impacted. And I had shared an experience in my dating life that inspired one of the people attending to say, "No exit wounds." And so that's the name of tonight's episode, No Exit Wounds. Because I was able to leave a romantic relationship without being wounded. Now, did the ending hurt? Sure, I grieved the ending because for all intents and purposes, overall, it was a great experience. I left it feeling proud of myself because I did not betray myself. And this was the very first time in my whole dating experience in my adult life that I ever left a relationship without feeling some kind of way, without being resentful, angry, hurt, disappointed, offended, disenchanted, mortified, abused. This was the very first one where none of that applied. I walked out with my head held high, and even with more of myself than I had when I went in. I had a firmer grip, a deeper depth of respect and regard for how I handled myself throughout that whole relationship. And it lasted for 9 months. So it wasn't a fluke and it wasn't a mistake. But I was in it for a while. I was in it long enough that normally I would have come out in worse condition than when I went in. But this was the first time that didn't happen. And so I wanted to share with you why, for me, it didn't happen. The first thing was he and I were clear and agreed on certain ground rules before we went in. We talked about what his expectations were and what my expectations were. And he laid out what his was. He said that if this does not work, we can't be friends. So he put it out there. And so I knew going in where he was at. Likewise, I shared with him where I was at, that I was looking for something long term. I wasn't just in it just to have a Friday night date or a +1. That I was looking for a boyfriend. I was looking for someone who really wanted to be in a relationship, who really wanted to date someone exclusively, and in hopes that we could see if there could be something sustainable about the relationship, and that I really didn't come to play. That I was at an age where I wanted something real. And that we started out equal on. He wanted something real, and I wanted something real. He wanted something with a future, and I wanted something with a future. So we started out on equal footing. And I can say that even though the relationship did not last, he wasn't my Mr. Right, that he was consistently showed up in that way throughout. I never had to figure out whether he was in or out. And he never had to figure out whether I was in or out. We were both in, and we brought our real selves to the table. That was the first thing, because I had never entered into a relationship where we were that forthcoming about what our expectations were, and that we were not going to really date anybody who did not want to truly show up for the relationship. So that was the first thing. Now that was he and I together. The things that were more personal for me was I stood up for me, my feelings, my experiences. I owned it. I owned who I was, where I was, what I had been through. I respected it. And that was something that over the course of a relationship, that it seemed like the relationship kept eating away at my resolve, eating away at my confidence, making me second guess myself. But when I came to this one, there was no second guessing. I had done enough work to reclaim my self-respect that I knew there were certain things that I had a deep regard for because of the work I put in and because of the me that I reclaimed as a result of it. One of those things was acknowledging my feelings. In previous relationships, I tried so hard to seem like I was okay. If he said something that hurt my feelings, I would shrug it off or act out in some other kind of way, right? But with this relationship, I stood up for my feelings. And that wasn't something I was taught to do. Quite the contrary. When I was growing up, and I would tell my mom that my dad hurt my feelings, she would always tell me, baby, your feelings matter. And then she would talk to my dad in private, and she'd come and get me and say, I talked to your dad. I told him what you shared with me, and he is willing to hear you out. He's willing to talk. And I'd be like, now the first couple of times Mama said it, I went into my dad's presence. I told him how I felt, thinking that I would be received with love and affection and regard for my feelings. But my dad, as much as I'm a daddy's girl and as much as I love my dad, he never once responded that way. He always responded with disappointment and criticism. He would always make me feel bad. I would always get shamed and blamed for owning my feelings with my father. Now, like I said, the first couple of times, I went in fully open and vulnerable and got that emotional smackdown. Here's the thing though, it kept happening over and over and over again. I would share with my mom how I felt. She'd talk to my dad. She'd come and get me, tell me my dad promised he would listen and hear me out. I'd come and tell him how I felt. It was always greeted with a disapproving look, shaming me, blaming me, until I left at 18 to go to college. That was the dynamic. And when that happens to you over and over and over again, you build up some anger, some resentment, because you keep right on being put in a situation where you're hoping that this time it's going to be different. But it never is. And that happened over and over and over again. So when I tell you that it took a lot for me to reclaim that part of me where I could speak from the heart, share my feelings, own my feelings, stand up for my feelings in that way, then you have to know it took a lot of work, a lot of healing, a lot of deep diving, a lot of forgiving, a lot of me becoming for myself what my father could not be for me, becoming for myself what my mother could not be for me. And so when I experienced that same level of dismissal from this man, and I was able to stand in my truth and respect it and regard it without being angry, without second guessing myself, without suffering emotionally. Oh, honey, I tell you, that was a win for me. And I was able to stand in it, regardless of whatever way the guy I was dating came at me. I stood for me. And I was proud of that. The second thing, I felt no need to prove anything to him. I felt no need to prove him wrong. I felt no need to change his mind. When I stood up for me in my feelings, it was out of regard for me. It wasn't because I was angry with him or defensive. Because a lot of times, when people do things like that and we end up very angry or we respond with a lot of intensity, it's because there's a part of us that wonders if they're right. But the reason I felt no need to prove anything is because there was nothing in me that thought he was right. I had nothing to defend. I didn't have a need to change his mind in order to prove to myself that I was worthy of it. I had no reason to. And so it was a win for me that I found no reason to change his mind. That wasn't even what I was trying to do. I was just stating a fact. I regarded my feelings. And for me, that was the best thing I was bringing to him, because he was getting all of me. He was getting me authentically. I wasn't holding any part of me back. And that felt so good to be able to say, I did that. I did not do to myself what my mom and my dad did. And I know they didn't mean any harm. They were only dealing with their own pain, their own short-sightedness. My mom and my dad didn't know anything about doing the work on themselves. All they knew was going to church and going to work. That was it. So they could only give me where they were. And that's where my dad was. My dad felt like emotion was weakness. If I came to him crying about something, he saw it as weakness. And in that regard, the guy I was dating was just like my dad. He saw me sharing about my feelings as weakness too. And I had a real aha moment when the relationship was ended and I was going through the grief process. Not grieving him, but grieving the fact that, okay, I'm not a couple anymore. I loved being part of a couple. It was so cool. It was so cool. It's like, here comes Suzette and her boyfriend. It was like we were like a package deal. And it just felt good. It felt good. And so when it ended, I had to grieve that. I had to grieve the fact that there was not going to be someone calling to check on me. That it wasn't going to be someone who was going to cook for me when I'd had a long day at work. There wasn't someone who was going to care, right, about me or give me gifts or that kind of thing. So I grieved the ending of the relationship. I did not grieve him, if y'all understand what I mean. That part I didn't grieve. It was over, it was ended, and we actually parted amicably. We actually did. We had a really good heart-to-heart talk. And I came to the conclusion, even before the talk, that it was okay for him to have his opinions. It was okay for him to have his opinions of me. And it was okay for me to have my opinion of him. We just knew that having those opinions, however, was not going to serve a healthy relationship. And so we agreed to part. The third thing that I realized is that when he and I were breaking up, and I told him, I said, I think we've come to the end of this relationship. And he said to me, well, what if you wake up tomorrow and you've changed your mind? Or you wake up tomorrow and you regret that you broke things up with me? And I said to him, I said, while I truly appreciate the time we've had together, it has truly restored my faith in certain things. It has truly been a great experience for the most part. I've enjoyed you. I've enjoyed getting to know you. I've enjoyed this. I said, but the truth of the matter is, even if I wake up tomorrow and I miss your presence in my life, I will ask myself, but has anything changed? Has anything changed? Will missing that person change the reasons why we were breaking up? And I would remind myself, no. And I told him, I said, no, I'll just tell myself the truth. Even my emotions did not okie doke me. I allowed myself to go through the grieving process, that where you're feeling that absence, where you miss that person's presence in your life and what it represented to you, what it was for you. For me, it was the end of loneliness. And I did not want to go back to the way things were before. And I allowed myself to grieve that. You know, when you really understand the gift that being able to relate and connect with someone intimately is, then you realize that you deserve to grieve the loss. Regardless to how it ended, it meant something to you. For as long as it was, it meant something to you. And so that is worthy of giving it the time that it requires for you to grieve it. I think so many of us are still stuck in situations because we never let ourselves grieve. Or in the words of Iyanla Vanzant, we never let our heart break. There's some things that you have to let your heart break. Not stuff the pain back down. Not do everything you can to distract yourself. Not get a new project, a new outfit, a new job, a new man. But you need to just sit in the grief because it did mean something to you. And so that's what I did. So those are the things that I did that to me were honoring of my authenticity. They were honoring of the work that I had done on myself, the work that I had done on my relationship self. There is a difference. And my own respect for it. And so that's why I came out of it better, not bitter. Were there things that he did that got on my doggone nerves? You darn tootin'. Were the things that I could have called up my girlfriends and said, you would not believe what this man did? Sure. But I decided that instead of doing that, I was going to let the grown-up me handle this situation. And so I just kind of cut myself off for a while from situations where I might be tempted to lowball him, to go in that low vibration. And I just stayed to myself. I prayed, I read, I emoted, I poured out everything in the presence of God. When I was angry, I fussed and I cussed in God's presence. When I was sad, I cried and laid my head on God's lap. I did everything, just me and God, working it out. If I had questions, I'd say, why God? Why this? Why that? It was just me and God. And I think it was that way for about 3 months, where I did not go among people. I just kind of went to work, came home, kind of, stayed kind of to myself because I did not want to be tempted. And I knew that if I called up certain of my girlfriends, I would be tempted to be the victim, to make him out to be a villain. I would have been tempted to do that. But this was bigger than that for me. I needed to be an adult. I needed to be mature. I needed to be worthy of my age, and that I did not want to continue to this immature, dramatic exiting type of thing where you just got to talk bad about somebody and make it that person's fault, or then the other extreme of, oh, I'm just stupid, I just have dunce written across my face. I just didn't want to go through that. I didn't want to go through any extreme of the drama. I wanted to be a grown-up. And that's part of why my Love on Your Terms Masterclass is so important. It's to help us women over 40 to be grown-ups in our romantic lives. And so the whole focus is to help you to redefine what makes you enough and your worthiness to have love on your terms. Because I believe if you can have love on your terms, then you can exit without wounds. You can bring maturity into it and walk out of it with your head held high. It's a free masterclass. It's 5 days, but you do have to register. You do have to register, but it is free for 5 days. Don't you deserve to give yourself that? If so, the address is bit.ly/love on your terms. That is it. First register, right? Then join our Facebook group. Even if you don't like Facebook, you can still join my private Facebook group. Okay? Now you can't get in without registering. All the women in that group have registered for the masterclass. It's a wonderful group of ladies. It's intimate right now, but it's growing. People are really getting excited about this masterclass. I tell you, there's an energy around this masterclass. And I look at it as it is a masterclass whose time has come. This is your call to liberation. This is your call to healing. Don't waste this moment. Don't waste this opportunity. Okay? Well, that's it for now. I'll see you next week. And until then, I want you to know that you're worthy. You're worth it. You are more than enough. Bye now. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Vernon. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber. And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, you are enough.